Hi guys, my name is Terry. I am here at Camp Don Bosco, and we're going to talk about wildlife tracking. And during this lesson, you don't need anything. If you don't want to, you could just get outside, watch this video and get outside and look for some animals. But if you want, we have these outdoor adventure and outdoor explorer worksheets that are linked on the website, as well as if you have some sort of book at home that helps with wildlife tracking, then use that. If not, you don't have to use either of those things. But we're going to talk about wildlife, which are animals that live in the wild. And we're looking at animals that are specific here to the Pacific Northwest, where we live, here at Camp Don Bosco in this area. So we're going to be looking for something called signs of life. Signs of life, or just anything that shows that an animal has been there at one time or is there now. So a sign of life could be, it could be scat, which we have some examples of here. That means poop. That's a fancy way for naming a poop is scat. It could be footprints or something we call tracks in the ground, in the mud, in the snow. It could also be maybe scratchings on trees, or possibly even a nest or a den in which they live. So these examples throughout in nature that shows us that animals are present. Even chirping of birds, hearing their sounds, is a sign of life. So what I'm going to have you guys do, I'll tell you a little bit about these signs of life, scat and tracks, and then I'll ask you guys to go outside and look for some of them. So let me tell you a little bit about them. So come on over here and I'll show you some different types of scat. So when we are looking outside for, and we happen to come across maybe some poop on the ground, how would we know what kind of animal that is? So I'm going to try to give you some guidelines that help you kind of figure out what kind of animal it is. So if we look closer at it, we're going to look at different characteristics. Now, characteristics are just things about them that tell us kind of what it is. So if we're looking at these scat, they're fake, by the way, so that's why I'm going to touch them. One thing we can look at is the size of the poop, size of the scat. So do you think that a small little rabbit maybe made this? So I do not think so. It's probably a big animal that poops really big things, right? That made this big plop of a poop. So you're thinking big plops are probably big animals. And little itty bitty plops can be really little animals. Like if you think of mice or the little tubular poop that mice have. There are some exceptions to that though. If you look at this guy, this is from an animal that has hooves. The family of animal that has hooves are called ungulates. That's just a fun word to say. Ungulates. And they have special intestines that kind of pack down their food that they eat, and so they poop out in little pellets like this. So if you think of hooved animals like elk or deer or goats, they poop in little tiny pellets. So you can look for, if you find pellets, maybe it could be a hooved animal. Some other things to look at for scat is what the scat is made up of. So these are fake, so I can't tear them apart. But if you find poop outside, you can take a stick and kind of dig through it and see what's inside. So if you look at this one kind of closely, you can see there's tiny little bumps in there. And I think that's supposed to be seeds or berries. And if seeds or berries are in an animal's poop, probably means that they eat seeds or berries, right? They eat fruit. So they could be an herbivore, an animal that eats both food, that eats both plants and animals. Or it could just be a vegetarian or an herbivore. What did I say, omnivore? Omnivore eats both. Herbivore eats just plants. So if you maybe dig in one of these poops here, you might see that there's hair or bones. And that's probably an animal that eats other animals, or a predator. Or a carnivore is another word for that, an animal that eats meat, and only meat. So that kind of would help you narrow down what kind of animal it could be by looking inside the poop. The other things might be color too, so it might help you out kind of what's inside the poop, and the basic shapes and sizes. So that hopefully would help you narrow some things down. Oh, another cool thing about this. So these are two examples of that look kind of poop that looks similar. That might look like it might be in your backyard. So this guy, this is a canine. So this is a type of dog. It's actually a wolf poop. And this is a feline. So this one's a type of cat. It's actually a bobcat poop. And so the difference between the two, or how you can tell between canine and feline, is the cats have kind of twirly poop. They have these twists at the end, and their whole poop kind of twirls like a big slide or something that twirls. And so that's how you can kind of tell a difference between the two of those. All right, so we got scat. We're going to check out our tracks, and I'm going to show you some different types of tracks. I can talk about maybe how we can tell what types of animals possibly by the prints in the ground. Okay, there's a lot of different tracks here, but we're going to look for those characteristics again. So first of all, like the last time in poop, we're going to look for maybe the size of the track. So probably the big ones are big animals, the small ones are small animals. For example, this guy, probably is going to be a smaller animal than this guy, right? So that might be something that tells us, okay, this is going to be a small animal, this is going to be a big animal. It also can look at the depth at which the print is. So if it goes really deep, it's probably going to be a heavier animal. If it's really shallow, it could be a lighter animal. So it's something that you can look at as well. And you might want to see too, kind of looking at what the foot, or their foot might be used for. Sure, animals use their feet for all kinds of things. For example, this one's pretty specific. This guy looks like he has webbed feet, and so he probably lives near the water. He probably swims. In fact, this one's a Canadian goose. So that's an animal that lives near the water. It kind of helps us know what type of animal it could be. Probably a bird. We look at this one, hooved animals. We already talked about those guys. That kind of narrows it down to what type of animal it could be. It's this animal that does a lot of running and walking. Not necessarily uses it as much for clawing or scratching as opposed to these guys, or maybe even the big guy again. So this big one is a bear. This is a black bear print. And you can see their big claws. If you think about what black bears do, they do a lot of scratching in trees to find bugs that they can eat. And this animal might actually use their claws as well. So if we're noticing what they use them for, it might help us narrow down what type of animal it could be. Another thing to look for is whether or not they have those claws. So these two sets look very similar. So they all have 4 toes and a little pad in the center. Once again, this is canine and feline. That's the difference between dog and cat. And the way you can tell, so this one's a dog because it has these claw marks that are showing. As opposed to the feline, the cat doesn't have these claw marks. And if you think about it, if you have a cat at home, your cat can retract its claws. So it can have these claws that go into its feet and it doesn't come out. When it's walking around, it doesn't have those claws. So it can retract them. So when it's walking, when we think about a feline, like a bobcat or a cougar, they're walking in the ground, they don't have their claws out. But, so they won't make tracks. You can't see them in their track. But a dog can't retract their claws. They've got to have these claws on them at all times. And so if you see the claws, you know it can't be a feline necessarily. So it can't be a cat. So hopefully that helps with some of the things of narrowing down all the different types of prints or poop that you could see, scat or tracks. I want to show you some photos. When we are at camp, we set up these things called game cameras. And they're just like your camera, but they only go off if they see movement. And we set them up in the middle of the woods, and we try to see what animals are going by. So here's some examples of what you might see, what we see at Camp Don Bosco. So this is an example of some really cool crows. A little group of them there. Let's see what else we got. Oh, this one's a bunny that was up near our hive in the garden at Hamilton. See him hopping along? So you can see some bunnies out there. They probably have long, skinny feet with little claws. Ooh, this one's one of my favorites. Can you kind of see it in the window there? This one is a bobcat that was hanging out at Camp Hamilton. So bobcats are pretty cool. They'll have their retractable claws and the twirly poop. Ooh, yeah, this is another good one. So this one is a coyote. So this is a coyote that was passing by Camp Hamilton's property. He's got a friend with him too. Coyotes would have those claws showing in their tracks. Ooh, this one is a deer. I'm thinking it's a mule deer just because we typically have them out at Camp Hamilton, but I'm not exactly sure. But he was walking in the lake. Let's see what else. Ooh. Ah, this one's one of my favorites. Here, I'll show it off. This one was taken at nighttime at Camp Don Bosco. See that guy? That's the bottom of a black bear. He must have been just walking through Camp Don Bosco in the middle of the night, looking for a little snack. And then similarly, maybe it was his friend. This is the guy that broke into our beehive. Look at his big bottom, just sitting right down there and eating our honey. Pretty classic bear move. Oh, that's the other pictures I'm going to. So, I hope that you guys get a chance to get outside. Maybe it's your backyard, maybe it's a park, and to look for some of these signs of life. To listen for the calls and look for the prints and maybe the tracks, and hopefully you can do some wildlife tracking while you're out there. And we'll see you at Camp Don Bosco next time you come. Bye.